Welcome back everybody to Tony's Top Tips Workshop. Today's video is it's not a rush job, but I've had a lot of messages asking for advice on how on the 4040 CNC how do I do cutter changes and keep where the machine's running and I'm really glad that people's asked this question, because what it does do to me, it shows that people are listening to what I'm saying. Is if you're not sure, ask. That's it. Now, what I'm going to show you today is it might not be the same for your systems, your CNC. I don't know, but what I'm telling you today is the easiest way to do a cutter change for another Toolpath on the 4040 CNC, and I use the offline controller and I use the MPG controller for movement. Okay, it's not my Pro machine, the big one which works off a DSP. I don't run anything through the PC whatsoever. It's there untethered. I don't run that system. It's everybody's personal choice. I'm not bothered about watching what it's doing on the screen. I know when I put a file or however many toolpaths for one job in that and load it into the offline controller, it just works. Other people might have problems with it. I do not have problems whatsoever, it's really good for me. The system works and I like it and I stick to it, and that's what I tell everybody. If you've got a system that works, stick to it. But it's I've had some questions about running a different toolpath. If you've got a job, for instance, I've got one on at the moment, so I can't really move the machine. I don't want to disturb what I've got. You'll see it in a moment, and it's a carving of well, I'm actually making a mould. This is what you're seeing here is the mould. But anyway, but if you've got the 4040 same as me, there's no reason why, if you've got the same setup, that you can't do the same. All right. Now, what I must stress is that people are getting confused with the home position 00 and the job position 00. They are completely different. On my Pro machine, on the DSP, I have a button which will take it to home. Okay, so at any given time I can take it to home, not a problem. However, if I want to go back to the job position, which it has been logged in its memory because of a different button on that to press, which remembers the job position, that's the coordinates, I just press job position. So at any given time I can take it to home and then send it back to job position. It'll go back exactly where that job starts. Okay, now the 4040 I found that doesn't work. If you send it to home position, it goes to home, and then you've got coordinates which you'll see on your offline controller. I always, when I start a job, I send it to home. Okay, once it's at home, I zero it off. Okay, so everything's 00. Barring the Z-axis, because that's the thing that comes into play with the when you're touching off and you're doing for cutter changes. Okay, so I always send it to home position, then 00 the X and Y on the offline controller. Okay, then what I do is well, what I'll do is I'll take it to the machine. It's not going to be fired up, but I can point out what I mean. Okay, so I'll take it over there now. Right, here we are at the machine. Okay, I hope you can all see all that. As I say, this video is just to I've text people, message them back, and you, before you know it, you have a full page of trying to explain something. Rather, it's easier to shorten a video. Right, if I'm going to set up for this, as you can see here, it's a commando knife, and this is going to be a mould. Okay, that's why it's like that. So I've set my piece of timber in there, and if there's 3 tool paths to this job that I've done on my Vectrix Aspire, I might have 3 tool changes. Okay, one to take out most of the rough with a bigger cutter, roughing cut, and then another roughing cut, but with a smaller cutter, which will bring in more detail, and then a final pass with probably a 0.5 ball nose. Okay, so your 3 cutter changes. And people saying, how do I go about? They've watched some of my other videos where I've pointed out the coordinates. If you lose everything, you can get your job position back. Right, this is where it comes into play. So first thing I would do is get my my timber on my material, set up, clamp down, however I'm doing it. This is on pins, by the way, and screwed down, because I can flick this over and do the other side. I'll get that set up, then I'd send the machine on the offline controller. I would send it to home. Okay, just shut this down, it's getting a bit bright and it's trouble with lighting at the moment. I'll just drop you down a little bit more. I just hope you can see it. I do apologise because it's that bright out here. I'm having difficulty, and because the machine's here. Anyway, we'll go back to where I said. So first thing I would do is fire it all up, offline controller, and you would go into home the machine, move everything over here and home it off. Okay, this is what I do every time I'm doing a job. And then the next step I do is a 0 0. Okay, because you'll find if you look at your offline controller, you'll see that there's coordinates on that, even though it goes to 0 0, or home position should I say. So I 0 0 that off. Okay, you've nothing on it then. Doesn't matter about the z-axis, don't worry about that. Then what I do is I will put a cutter in for the first tool path. Okay, and then I will move my head away with the MPG, because there's some very fine settings on there. I move it over to the timber, and then I don't necessarily have to move it to where the job's going to start at that moment in time. Okay, whether it's in the center or it doesn't matter. And then I would move it over and touch off with the cutter in. Okay, so I have then the z-axis is in the touch off position. Okay, once you've touched off, you've got that, leave that where it is. I would then move the head X and Y to the job start position. Okay, that's the job start position, not home, job start. I get that, I go to the offline controller once I've got it into position, and I 0 0 the X and Y. Okay, not the Z, you've done that, you've touched off, the X and Y. You 0 0, that is your job position. And what I mean by that is that when you start the job, it will start from there, okay, and it will end up back there when it's finished that tool path. Whatever tool path you put in, it will go back to the job position of 0 0 X and Y, and your Z-axis will go into that position where it's been touched off. Okay, so we've done that. You put your first tool path in. On this one there's only 2. You would put your load into your offline controller, your first tool path, set it running. The machine will do the work, do the cutting, and then it will go back to job position, and mine is at job 0 0 at the moment. Now if you go back a step, right, what I do as well is when I bring that first start the machine off, and then I send it to home and I 0 0, okay, I then move it to the job position. Okay, it will look, before you zero the X and Y, look at the coordinates for those X and Y. I always write those down on a sticky note. Just write them down, X and Y coordinates. Doesn't matter about Z, X and Y coordinates. I'll come into that in a minute. Okay, so you do your first toolpath, and it goes back and stops at the job origin 0 0. Okay, you then want to do a toolpath. This is where people are getting confused, is you're thinking, what have I to do? And some have messaged me and said they've sent it to home and then they're lost, because when they start it doesn't go back to where it because they've pressed the home button, it takes it to home. What you do then is, obviously you've got a cutter change to do. So like this, now you can see that's hollow and this has a piece on here, so I can touch off with the probe on any part of that material. All right, all you simply do is on your X or your Y, which you might want to move both, or you might have taken some of all the material away from round here, so you can't touch off on that material again for your cutter change. So what I do every time is the material that I use to touch off on, okay, I always have a small piece of that material that I can put my probe on the bed and touch off on, and because you might not be able to do it on here. Now I can do it on here, so I've no need to bother about that. But if I'm going to be taking all the surface away and leaving something else in the middle, whatever your pattern is or whatever your job is, you can't touch off because you've taken some of that material away. So always just make sure you've got a block of the material that you can put and touch off on. Okay, so right, goes back to 0 0 position. Then what you do is, I always move my head up and your Z-axis up, change the cutter. You can do it over your job, doesn't matter. You're in 0 0 position, job position anyway. You actually change the cutter, but you have to touch off. So I then move either X or Y or both across to a position where I can put that touch probe on the job and touch off again. Okay, so you would do that, cutter in, move it over, send the Z-axis down, touch off. Okay, that's your Z-axis set. And then people are saying, well, hang on a minute, I've moved the head. It doesn't matter. The job position is always locked in as 0 0. So what you do then, you don't have to move that head back. It can be over there, it can be over here where you've touched off. It doesn't matter. All you've done is move the machine. You've not altered the 0 0 coordinates for the job origin. So then all you do is put your next toolpath in. Once you've loaded that, press run. When you run, then this machine, the Z-axis will move up. That's common. That's what it will do, because it already knows the surface of here. It'll move up to clear, and then what it will do, the machine will move the head back to the 0 0 position, the job origin. Okay, and then it will start from there because it is locked in. I just hope I'm making that clear. You don't have to try to find any job origin again. The machine knows where it is. You've just moved it, and it will not start from the position you've moved it to. It will move back to the job origin and start away. So you can do as many toolpaths as you want. You just don't do it or send it home on the offline controller, because if you do that, it'll go back there. Right, so I'm hoping to make myself clear. Once you've touched off, change your cutter. wherever you've moved your machine to, just run your program again. Mine goes back to the job origin, which is 00 because you've zeroed off, and it starts from there. Okay, right. Now what happens, a gentleman says, I've zeroed, what do I do? Well, this is where, when I told you to write the coordinates down for your job origin before you zero it, okay, that's when you've homed, you've moved it to the job origin, your cutter's in and everything, you're ready to run. Before you zero X and Y, write those coordinates down. Okay, now this is where, if you've accidentally, and trust me, I've done it, some reason I've gone back to and pressed home and it's gone back to home position. So then what you do is, if that occurs, or you have a stop out for whatever reason, it stops, and or you have a power outage or something like that, and you've lost it all, just simply don't worry about it, just fire the machine back up again, send it back to home. You might have already done that. Once you get to home, 00 X and Y, touch off as you would normally do with your probe, because you need to do that as well. So your Z-axis will be set, you've sent it to home, you've zeroed it. Then you can do it on offline controller, but it's easier with this. Is then remember the coordinates you wrote down, just simply move back the X and Y till you've got those coordinates exact. And it's easy to do, really. Once you've done it once, you'll know it'll come natural to you. Once it comes to the right coordinates again, where your job origin was originally, okay, then 00 the X and Y again. That's back to where the job was originally. Okay, that's why I always write those coordinates down. It works for me. Now, if it doesn't work for other people on other machines, or even on the 4040 working from the PC, I can't answer that. I can only tell you what I do, and it works every time. And then just start your machine off, and then it'll just carry on. Okay, now if you've, for instance, you've got halfway through a job, which I did once. I got halfway through a job and I walked past the machine and I caught the cable, because mine's on an extension cable, pulled it out, stopped the machine dead. I thought, oh no, and I'd been 3 hours into the job, and I thought, oh, it was really annoying me that, but it was okay because I'd wrote the coordinates down. So what I did was, as I've just explained, I sent the machine back to home, zeroed it, sent it back, or moved it over to the coordinates for what the job origin was before I zeroed it, and I started the machine again. Now it had already, you have to let it go through because it's like starting from fresh again. So you have to let it run now, and it'll run over where you've cut previous, and it won't be cutting at all, but then eventually it'll get to the point 3 hours later, back to the job and start again, and it'll start from where I knocked the cable and it powered out, and it just carried on. Unfortunately, you can't pick the actual coordinates up for where it was stopped. I've never, whether there's a way for that, I don't know. I've never tried that. I've just let the machine run again, and it's picked up, and it's done it absolutely perfect. As I say, I don't get stoppages with the offline control and the MPG. It just works. I can have 4 toolpaths. It just works. You've just to load the next toolpath, cut a change, next toolpath, and off it goes. It might not even be, if you don't have to be a cutter change. It might be a different toolpath but doing a different part. So it doesn't matter, it just works. So as I say, this is just to explain to people, this is my system. Please, if you use it and it works for you, fine, but please don't say, well, it don't work for me and this and that. I don't know how you're running it or what your systems are on all the CNC. My CNC, my main CNC, my Pro one and my other one, I can do the same with those. I can input the coordinates from my 3030. That's the same. Once you zero off, the machine automatically goes back to there. Even after a cutter change, it will go back to the job origin and start from there. Okay, you obviously have to touch off, but as I explained to you, if you're going to touch off, make sure you've either got a spare piece of material if you've taken any surface away, so you can't touch off on the surface again, and touch off on that. And wherever you've moved the machine to, just leave it there. Just put your next toolpath in, run that, and it will. If it doesn't, I don't know why it isn't, because mine does it every time. It just goes back to the job origin. I can put it over in far corner, change the cutter, and then put the new toolpath in, and it'll run from there across here and back and start from the job origin. Alright, I hope that's cleared things up. I mean, if I'd have had to have put this in writing on the message, and I have done some, trust me, and people were getting confused. Do I have to put it back to it? Come on, it's those what I showed in previous videos about the coordinates, but if things went wrong, and it as I say, with any machine, a CNC machine, it all works on coordinates. But you can either with that move it, or the offline controller. You can get, providing you've wrote them down when you first moved it from home, you move it to the position, job position. Before you zero X and Y, always write those coordinates down. You might not use them, but if you have to, they're there. And if you've got a lengthy job like me, idiot, kicking cable out, I could have said trashed in bin, but no, because I'd wrote those coordinates down, and I didn't find any discrepancy. I didn't find it cutting anywhere else where it had passed over previous, because that's a telltale sign. If you didn't get it back to the right coordinates, it would start cutting parts that it had already cut previous before you stopped it. And no, it didn't. It just carried on as normal. Yes, I had 3 hours to wait till it got to its next part where it had stopped, and I just heard it cutting again. I was in the workshop, or doing some other work, repair work, and it just carried on. So as I say, that's what I do on every job, is write the coordinates down for the job position. The job position and the home position are two totally different positions. Okay, if anybody else does a different system or doesn't agree, please let me know in the comments. You know, we're all learning, and it helps when somebody else gives me a little bit of information back. I'm not a professional on CNCs. I've just learnt this, and I haven't picked up on this from really anybody else on the internet. I've learnt this myself, and it never fails. It never times out, and never get it not linking between the USB cables, or the machine powers out the computer, or it drops out. I put the micro SD card in there, put the toolpath in, do what I have to do. It just runs. It's self-contained, it just runs. I can walk away. I'm not bothered about watching it on a PC. I can do other things, and you know, how many people say, oh, doing a project and the PC's dropped out, I lost it. I have not had any problems with this setup whatsoever, and believe me that the MPG has been absolutely brilliant, because with the different settings you can move in whichever one you want. You can on your offline control, but this makes it easier, and you're fine-tuning it so that you can watch your offline controller to pick your coordinates back up that I was explaining about, and then you can move it quickly to get to where you want to go, and then fine-tune it, and then get it down to precisely those coordinates, whether it's point, whatever it is. Okay, so I just hope I'm not confused, people. It's a system I run. I do it every time without fail. I'll recap, go to your machine, switch on, clamp your job down to where you want it, send the machine to home, always to home. Once you've sent it to home, you can then install your cutter. Don't matter whereabouts on board you install your cutter, and then once you've installed your cutter, touch off with your Z probe on your material surface. Okay, that's that. Once you've done that, then move your machine X and Y to the job start position. A lot of people, some people, and I do it sometimes, is when you're zeroing off, you'll do a cutter change, and then it enables you to get, I always draw a cross on the wood or a mark on the wood where I want my job origin, and then I'll move the Z-axis and the cutter down as close to that mark as possible, so you can get a better accurate positioning. I move the X and Y over, move it over, and then once I've got that position, then I'll lift the Z-axis up, and then I'll touch off. Once you've touched off, leave it in that position, and then you know you're over the right job origin where you've marked it. Take a reading of the coordinates for X and Y, sticky note. You tear it up and throw it away once you finish with it. Sticky note, and you're ready to go. Once you've taken those, 0, 0 your X and Y. Put your first toolpath in, run your program. When it finishes, you want to do a cutter change. Move your head X and Y over to a point where you can actually touch off again, change your cutter, touch off, run your next toolpath, and you'll find out it'll go back to the job origin and start from there. Okay. Also, the one of the things I do as well is, if I've been down in the shop and I've been working away for 2 or 3 hours, and like the job that Wayne put on me, then it was late. By the time I'd run another 3 hours, it was 6 hours we were down in the workshop, and it's a bit long. So I thought, I'm going to go upstairs. It'd finish its toolpath, the machine, and it went back to job origin. And first thing I did was, I said, right, I'm finishing now. I left the machine where it was, back at job origin, and switched the machine off. Okay. And then people say, oh, what do you do then when you come back on? I switch the machine on, it stays where it is, it doesn't go back to home position. I believe you can in G code send it that every time you power on it goes to home position, but I don't do that. And leave it where it is, get ready, go as I'm going on the offline controller back to the to start a new toolpath, and then all I do is make sure that when I've switched it on, I 0, 0 the X and Y. Okay, and then I'll touch off as well. Okay, and it will you need to, I'd do all three again, X and Y, but I'll 0 first on the X and Y, then move the machine, touch off, and then run the next toolpath, and it'll just start again from where I left it stopped, but it's the job origin again. Okay, so I hope you get that as well. You've to do it a few times. I practiced it a number of times. We just put a cutter in, do a simple program, and then just did it to see how far it were out. When I inputted the coordinates again, it was spot on every time. So but that's it. I hope the video, as I say, it's only a shortish video as such for me anyway, and it's just to clarify what I do for some of the questions that I've been given. I've answered people, but I'm sure there's plenty more out there that wonder, they get these machines and they wonder how to do a cutter change. Well, that is the system I use, and it works every time. I don't have any hiccups with it. It carries on after I've done a cutter change for the next toolpath, and it just goes back to the job origin and carries on from there. Okay, so remember, job origin and home are two totally different positions. Some machines might work in different ways. I know I can do what I've done here, or what I use. The system I use is on my main Pro machine and my 3030. No different. I still do the same, and it works every time. The only difference with the Pro machine is on the DSP you've two buttons. You've one for job origin and one for home, so I can send it to home. There's not a problem, and once I've sent it to home, I can do what I want, and I just press job origin and it goes back, because it remembers the two coordinates. Okay, so, but I don't know whether your systems will be working, what it's like to run it from the PC, because as I say, if anybody runs it from PC in a similar way, then please let me know, but I don't know, because I don't do that. And everybody tends to have their own little system that they want to run, and I find this as easy as anything else. I can and the beauty about it is, like the my laser cutters are all linked to the PC. They have a USB cable. I don't run them from a chip selective, so I can put a program on the machine, design whatever I want on Vectrix, and then put it onto the chip, start the machine running. I can go on and use my laser machine. I'm doing another job. That is running independently, and that's what I like. I don't like things tethered all the time. But there you go, that's my system. I hope you can understand what I've said, and I hope it helps somebody. If you've got any more queries, please comment, let me know, and I will answer you. I always answer everybody. And if you've enjoyed the video today, give me a thumbs up. It does help. And don't forget, if you're only watching it for the first time, like and subscribe. It does help me, and I'm pleased when I get more subscribers. But it is slow work, but I find it interesting and enjoyable. So, right, as I always say, end of video. You be safe, you be careful. Bye for now. Bye.